It was meant to be an executive trap. She didn't quit, she took over. I left London believing I had finally earned my moment. For years, I worked longer than everyone else, stayed later, and spoke less while delivering more. When the offer from Rotterdam arrived, it felt like proof that I mattered. The salary was generous. The relocation package removed every excuse to say no. The title supply chain and logistics manager felt heavy and powerful in my hands. Daniel did not share my excitement. He smiled, but his voice stayed careful. He asked if we really needed such a big change. He said London was home. I told him growth never feels comfortable. I told him this move was about building a future, even if it scared us both. On the flight, I imagined respect waiting for me. I imagined meetings where my voice mattered. I imagined a company that valued global talent instead of borders. I promised myself I would stay strong, no matter what. As the plane landed, the city below looked calm and clean. I felt ready. I had no idea the offer was not a reward. It was a test, wrapped in opportunity. And I walked into it with confidence, unaware of how carefully it had been designed. My first days in Rotterdam felt polished and cold at the same time. The HR team welcomed me warmly, praising my experience and assuring me I was a perfect fit. My apartment overlooked the river, all glass and clean lines. It looked like success. At the office, people were polite but distant. Smiles appeared quickly and faded just as fast. Conversations paused when I walked into a room. When they resumed, they shifted into Dutch without warning. I stood there, pretending it did not bother me. Meetings felt strange. Decisions seemed to happen before I arrived. Emails were short and often unclear. When I asked questions, I was told not to worry. At night, I stood by my window watching boats slide across the river. The city was quiet and beautiful, but I felt alone inside it. Daniel called and asked how everything was going. I said it was great. I did not want to admit that something felt off. I believed effort would earn trust. I did not yet understand that trust was never part of their plan. Alara Van Dyke was introduced as my work buddy on my second day. She was stylish, confident, and spoke English effortlessly. Her smile felt easy, and I relaxed for the first time since arriving. She showed me around the office and explained systems quickly. She asked many questions about my time in London, how I managed vendors, how I tracked performance, how our supply chain worked. Your systems must be outdated compared to ours, she laughed lightly. I laughed too, even though the comment felt sharp. She promised to send me documents later, but they rarely arrived. When I asked again, she said she assumed I already had them. Still, she checked on me often. She complimented my clothes and said I was brave for moving abroad alone. Her kindness felt practiced, but I ignored the feeling. I wanted an ally. That evening, her questions replayed in my mind. They were not curious. They were detailed and precise. I did not yet realize she was not helping me adjust. She was learning how to control the space around me. Eric Jansen was calm, intelligent, and clearly respected. He spoke English well, but in meetings, he often switched into Dutch without warning. When he did, the room leaned in, and I was left behind. I waited for summaries that never came. Important decisions were made while I sat quietly, smiling and taking notes I could not fully understand. When I asked questions later, Eric said we would align soon. Soon never arrived. Emails came late or not at all. Documents appeared in shared folders I had never been told about. I led a department in title, but not in practice. I spent evenings translating notes and guessing priorities. I worked harder than ever, afraid of missing something important. Daniel said I sounded tired on the phone. I told him it was just the adjustment phase. Inside, doubt began to grow. Language became a wall. Not loud, not obvious, but firm. And every day, I stood on the wrong side of it, wondering when the door would open. Problems appeared slowly, almost politely. Reports arrived late. Data felt incomplete. Vendors complained about delays I never approved. On paper, my performance started to slip. Alara apologized kindly. She blamed system delays. She blamed misunderstandings. She promised to fix things. I trusted her at first. I worked longer hours, trying to close gaps I could not fully see. Each solution created another issue. My KPIs continued to fall, and no one explained why. One vendor called me angry one afternoon, accusing me of ignoring urgent messages. I searched my inbox. Nothing. Hours later, I found his emails buried in a shared folder I had never been shown. Fear crept in quietly. My reputation was changing, and I did not understand how. It felt like someone was pushing me, gently and constantly, toward failure. They were not rushing. They were patient. And that scared me more than open conflict ever could. Back in London, Daniel began to change. His messages grew shorter. His voice sounded distant. He said I talked about work too much. One night, he said I had chosen ambition over family. His words hurt deeply. They echoed the doubts already forming in my mind. Maybe I was becoming someone else. Maybe success demanded too much. I stopped sharing my fears with him. I did not want to appear weak. I carried the pressure alone. That pressure showed at work. I hesitated during meetings. I second-guessed decisions. I stopped pushing back when things felt wrong. Looking back, I see how perfect the timing was. As my confidence weakened, the problems increased. No one attacked me directly. They did not need to. I was already leaning. The trap was quiet, emotional, and precise, and I was standing right at its center without realizing how close I was to falling. One afternoon, I walked past a conference room and heard laughter. Alara and Eric were inside, speaking Dutch. My name slipped into the conversation. They laughed again. Later that day, a junior analyst approached me quietly near the coffee machine. His voice was low, and his eyes kept moving. "They think you're temporary," he said. "They want someone local in your role." The truth hit hard. Suddenly, everything made sense. The silence. The missing data. The way decisions happened without me. That night, I did not cry. I felt something sharper than sadness. I felt clarity. I realized I was not failing. I was being prepared to fail. From that moment, I stopped trying to fit in. I started watching carefully, listening closely, remembering everything. The game was real now. And for the first time, I understood that I was not just a player. I was the target. I found the restructuring memo by accident. It was hidden under a vague file name in a shared drive. I opened it out of curiosity, then felt my stomach drop. My department's failures were listed in detail. Missed targets, delays, poor leadership. Every issue pointed directly at me. At the end of the document, a recommendation appeared. Alara Van Dyke. My hands shook, but my mind stayed calm. The plan was clear. I would take the blame, she would take my role. I did not print the memo. I did not forward it. I memorized it. Instead of confronting anyone, I changed my behavior. I smiled more. I asked fewer questions. I acted confused and overwhelmed. They relaxed. That document changed everything. Fear turned into focus. I stopped reacting to what they did. I started planning what I would do next. After finding the memo, I became careful with every move I made. I stopped asking questions that made people uncomfortable. I nodded more. I thanked Alara for help I knew was hurting me. I let them believe I was lost. Inside, I was wide awake. Every evening, I wrote everything down. I recorded dates, meeting notes, missing files, and delayed reports. I saved copies of emails that arrived too late. I noted every time information changed after I reviewed it. I paid attention to patterns. Problems always appeared just before reviews. Solutions always came from Alara. I noticed how often my name appeared next to failures, and how rarely it appeared next to fixes. They thought I was overwhelmed. That belief protected me. Silence became my shield. While they talked freely around me, I listened. While they planned my exit, I built a timeline they could not rewrite. I no longer needed approval. I needed proof. And every quiet day gave me more of it. Instead of staying close to leadership, I moved toward the edges of the company. I visited warehouses without announcing it. Supervisors welcomed me with surprise and relief. They spoke honestly because no one else listened to them. They showed me delayed shipments and broken processes. They explained how instructions changed without notice. Vendors shared emails that proved approvals were edited after the fact. I spent time with IT analysts, asking simple questions. They explained access rights, file changes, and system logs. They never accused anyone directly, but the patterns were clear. These people had been ignored by Alara. That made them powerful allies. They trusted me because I listened, and because I never blamed them. Piece by piece, the full picture formed. The failures blamed on my leadership were created long before I arrived. Data gaps were not accidents. They were tools. While my image stayed weak at the top, my foundation grew strong underneath. And for the first time, I felt steady again. One evening, while reviewing supplier contracts, I noticed something strange. One vendor kept winning bids despite higher costs and slower delivery times. The pattern repeated across months. I dug deeper. Payment terms were adjusted slightly. Invoices were rounded in unusual ways. When I traced the ownership details, my chest tightened. The vendor was connected to Alara's cousin. The realization made me feel sick. This was not just office politics. This was fraud. I double-checked everything. I compared contracts, emails, and approval timelines. The evidence lined up too neatly to ignore. I did not react. I did not tell anyone. I documented everything carefully, saving copies outside shared systems. At that moment, the story changed. This was no longer only about protecting my role. This was about stopping something bigger. The trap they built for me now had teeth. And this time, it was pointed in the right direction. As I studied the situation, I began to understand Eric better. He was intelligent and respected, but he was under pressure. Headquarters demanded cost reductions. Delays were unacceptable. Alara fed him selective data, clean charts, partial truths. She framed herself as the solution, and me as the problem. Eric did not question her. He wanted stability. He wanted answers that felt simple. I did not see him as an enemy. I saw him as someone being guided carefully away from the truth. Understanding his weakness helped me plan my next steps. I did not expose him. I did not confront him. I focused on results. If I could fix what mattered most, the numbers would speak for me. For the first time since arriving in Rotterdam, I felt control returning. Not through power, but through patience. I reached out to former colleagues in London quietly. I did not explain everything. I asked questions. I listened. Using my global network, I renegotiated shipping routes and carrier agreements. I compared costs across regions and adjusted volumes. Within weeks, delays dropped. Costs fell sharply. Performance improved without new systems or staff. The numbers spoke clearly. My KPIs rose faster than anyone expected. There were no excuses, only results. Executives began asking questions. They wanted to know what changed. Alara smiled wider in meetings. She praised my efforts publicly. Privately, her tone shifted. She asked more questions. Her confidence cracked. For the first time, the pressure moved away from me. And it did not move gently. Leadership attention grew stronger each week. Reports were reviewed more closely. Questions became more detailed. Alara stood beside me in meetings, nodding supportively. Her words were kind, but her eyes were restless. I stayed calm. I shared data clearly and simply. I focused on outcomes, not blame. The balance was shifting. The same silence that once trapped me now protected me. I felt the trap tightening, but this time, it was not around my ankles. It was around hers. When the evidence was complete, I acted carefully. I sent anonymized documentation to compliance and internal audit. Every file was verified. Every date was clear. Every connection was traceable. I did not include opinions. I sent facts. Then I waited. Waiting was the hardest part. I continued working as usual, never showing fear or relief. The storm was coming. I only needed to stay steady until it arrived. The auditors arrived without warning. Their presence changed the building instantly. Conversations dropped. Smiles tightened. Alara remained confident at first. She laughed and welcomed them. Then, they asked for her emails, her vendor communications, her financial disclosures. The color drained from her face. I said nothing. I watched. The trap closed quietly, exactly the way it had been built. Daniel visited Rotterdam soon after. He saw my routine, my calm, my focus. He told me he finally understood. I had not changed. I had grown. We talked honestly for the first time in months. The distance between us softened. As he left, I felt lighter. For the first time since arriving, I believed I would finish what I started. Alara did not go quietly. As the audit continued, she made one last move. Reports appeared with errors tied to my name. Vendor complaints were forwarded as if I caused them. A file surfaced showing approvals I never made. For a brief moment, doubt returned. I wondered if she might succeed after all. Then, it requested access logs. Every file edit, every timestamp, every system entry told the truth. The false reports traced back to Alara's account. The approvals were planted. The changes were deliberate. I sat silently as the evidence was reviewed. I did not defend myself. I did not accuse her. I let the facts speak. That was when I understood something important. Power does not come from shouting the truth. It comes from letting truth stand where lies cannot survive. When Alara realized the plan failed, her confidence collapsed. The trap she set for me closed around her instead. I felt no joy watching it happen, only calm. The kind that comes from knowing you did not win by cheating. You won by staying ready. Eric called a private meeting soon after. His voice was heavy, his posture tense. The audit findings were clear now. He finally saw how the data had been shaped and how he had been guided away from the truth. When Alara entered the room, she tried to stay composed. Eric confronted her directly. He asked about the contracts, the emails, the access logs. She broke down. She said she felt pressured. She said discrimination played a role. She said she only wanted to protect her position. I listened quietly. Eric did not shout. He did not interrupt. When she finished, the silence was heavier than any argument. That silence carried understanding, not just of her actions, but of his own mistake. When the meeting ended, Eric apologized to me. It was simple and honest. I accepted it without pride. Trust, once broken, does not return easily. But accountability opens the door, and that door had finally moved. The board meeting was scheduled quickly. I was asked to present a supply chain transformation plan. I focused on solutions, not history. I spoke clearly and simply. I showed how processes could be fixed, how trust could be rebuilt, and how global experience added value instead of conflict. I explained cultural gaps without blame. I showed results without exaggeration. The room felt different from my first meetings. This time, eyes stayed on me. Questions were thoughtful. When I finished, the board thanked me. They praised my leadership and my ability to work across cultures without losing direction. For the first time, I felt fully seen. I left the room steady, not relieved. This was not survival anymore. This was progress. Alara was suspended pending termination within days. The decision spread quietly but quickly. In Dutch corporate circles, reputations move faster than official statements. Her office emptied. Her meetings vanished from calendars. I did not celebrate. I focused on my work. The company needed repair, not gossip. Watching her career fall felt strange. She once stood above me, confident and untouchable. Now she was gone, undone by her own actions. Power built on control never lasts. That lesson stayed with me. Something shifted after that. People greeted me in hallways. Conversations waited for me. Meetings switched to English without hesitation. No one announced the change. It just happened. Respect replaced distance. I noticed how small gestures mattered. A nod, a question, a pause to include me. Belonging did not come from winning. It came from consistency. I finally felt part of the company, not an outsider passing through. 23. Eric recommended me for Regional Director of Supply Chain for Northern Europe during restructuring talks. The new structure placed me above him. When he told me, his voice was steady. He said it was earned. I accepted without pride or fear. Leadership, I learned, was not about rank. It was about responsibility. This role meant shaping systems, not fighting them. I was ready. Alara sent one message before leaving. I underestimated you. I thought you'd break. I read it once. I don't break, I replied. I document. I never heard from her again. I stood on my apartment balcony, overlooking the river, city lights reflecting on the water below. The same view that once felt cold, now felt calm. Daniel stood beside me, holding my hand. We did not speak. We did not need to. Rotterdam was meant to end me. Instead, it taught me how power really works. I did not survive corporate politics. I mastered it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can catch every daily episode of Revenge with Avenix. You won't want to miss what happens next.